single business I was in was effectively doing a Black Friday sale in April, right? And I was like, we're turning up, and I'm not kidding. By April 15th, we had generated about $360,000 in sales. I made enough to cover the tax bill, plus enough to cover what I paid. I sent the entire amount to the IRS, and for the first time in years, I was broke. I was at zero, and it felt amazing.
Hey, I'm Pam Pryor, and this is the Cash Flow Podcast. We're going to talk about everything related to money in your business. Without further ado, let's hop right in. And we are live again. Welcome back to the Cash Flow Podcast, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with one of my very best friends and the gentleman who just recently apparently interrupted his vacation on the beach, which he gets very rarely, to write the foreword for my new book. So this is a welcoming you back to Cash Flow, the Know Your Map segment. As you know, this is where we kind of celebrate all of those relationships and their power in moving us from transactional entrepreneurs to entrepreneurs who can really make a difference and that feeds cash flow back into our businesses. One of my mentors, friends, teachers, clients, supplier, you name it. I think we've done just about everything together, Ryan Deiss. I'm going to give a little bit of your official introduction because I want to make sure people know who you are. As a serial entrepreneur, author, investor. Damon John from Shark Tank even says that your companies practically own the internet. And I think that's true because when I started out, I knew nothing, but I found Digital Marketer. And Ryan is the founder of Digital Marketer, Traffic and Conversion, the Scalable Company. So a number of places where early bird entrepreneurs enter the scene. You're going to see Ryan, you're going to hear his name, and I will tell you he's one of the good guys. Because if you've been a new entrepreneur, especially in the internet age, you know that there are a lot of shysters out there. And Ryan is the one who established my belief and continues to restore it day in and day out in every interaction with him. Just for context, he's been on stages with the likes of Richard Branson, Gary Vaynerchuk, Sarah Blakely, Martha Stewart, Tim Ferriss. He's been mentioned by some of the sharks in Shark Tank. This man knows his stuff about being an entrepreneur today. And I'm just so grateful you're here to talk about your relationship, Matt Ryan. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure to be here. Always good to hang out and chat.
Good deal. So I don't know that I've told you this story, but what I have done is I've created a mind map of everybody I've met since I became an entrepreneur. And I put my little self in the middle and then all the people I've met and then who they introduced me to, only the ones that became meaningful relationships, but still all of them. And the thing I do with this is every day I go to the end of one of those lines and back all the way through it to the beginning, just to do a little gratitude for everybody on the line. And I'll reach out and say hi. Well, you are one of my little nodules that just freaking explodes. So you get on my gratitude list just about every day, along with the likes of Angela Loria and Steve Sims and those types, because you have such a reach. So how long ago did you get into this game and what got you here?
Well, I made my first sale online. I guess I technically started my first business. I don't think you can really call it that because I didn't bother to set up any of the actual business forms or anything like that you need to. I didn't know any of that stuff, which frankly is what ultimately led me to you, which we'll get there, eventually, although that took 20 years, probably longer than it should have. But no, my very first sale online I made in 1999. So I've been doing this entrepreneurship game and specifically digital online entrepreneurship longer than really Google has been a thing.
Did we actually have green screens back then, Ryan?
It was, no joke, Google was a science fair project. I remember my very first business, I was trying to optimize for Alta Vista, not even kidding. And my whole goal then was just, can I make enough to buy my wife sorry.
I'm still listening.
Okay.
That's my dogs. I'm just shutting the door on them.
When you and I talk all the time, I'm used to the dogs. I didn't know if the listeners were, so I'm sure
they are. It's part of the brand. Beer and dogs are part of my brand. Beer, dogs, and finance.
Love it. Well, I'm not. Yeah, that's a great. The Venn diagram of that is pretty amazing. Yeah. So I talked about this in the forward of your book, but I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur, to start a business. I didn't know what that was. My very first goal was just, can I make some extra money to buy this woman I had been dating an engagement ring at some point one day?
I
right? That
loved
was my
reading
goal.
that.
That was it. And it was real. Like we'd been dating 2 weeks and I knew like this is the woman I'm probably going to marry. I didn't tell her that.
Wait, okay, time out. I got to
Okay.
dive in on that. So
Okay.
this is all about relationships. So
Yeah.
you knew you wanted to marry your wife 2 weeks after you met her, or
Yeah.
before that even.
I know it was about 2 weeks in. I didn't tell her that though, because I knew that could come off a little creepy. Um, I don't pretend for 1 second, by the way, that that's normal. And now, having 4 kids, I can only imagine my oldest daughter, who's 16 now. She called me on her. She's like, "Oh, I've been dating this boy for a couple weeks, and he told me 2 weeks in that he wants to marry me." I'd be like, "Well, we're going to murder him now." So,
Yes.
all that to be said, I don't think that's normal. But for me, the way my brain works, I can be very kind of. I switch between very hyperlinear thinking and horizontal thinking, and I can take on different modes. And at this point, my thinking was, okay, I met a girl, probably the one I'm going to marry. If I ask her to marry me, that's going to require a diamond ring. Diamonds are expensive. Crap, I'm broke. I have a job that's paying for like food and shelter. What can I do? I know I'll start a business. So my first business was
Love it.
actually a services business, designing websites for people. I wasn't very good at it,
I
but
was gonna say,
nobody.
did you know how? Are you self-taught at
Yeah,
that
so
point?
yeah, it was 1999. Nobody knew
Yep.
Bill. So
So
I benefited a lot from just being there when nobody else was.
timing.
That was where the game started. And I'm like a lot of the people that you and I both serve. I was an accidental entrepreneur. I woke up one day and looked around. I had this pesky business that I had to figure out how to run. It wasn't
Yep.
the plan, and nobody gave me a roadmap or a playbook on
Love
how
it.
to do it. But yeah, so it was a very accidental start to the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay, so 1999 to 2024, we're talking 25 years. So this is
Yeah.
sort of your anniversary year. So we
Yeah.
need to get you something silver, which is fine. But um, during that time, so you have been one of the people who, in my mind, exemplifies pouring into relationships. Who was the first person kind of out of the gate that you saw change your trajectory? Like you started a business, you sold some stuff, I'm guessing some services, but something turned you into this serial entrepreneur, very successful. Like who are the people who affected that trajectory early on in your life,
Well, so
in your business life?
candidly, I think early on I had more anti-mentors than I had mentors.
I love
Um,
that.
a lot of the people who I was seeing out there, who they were marketing, especially in the early days of the internet, my God, I mean, so many just gypsies, tramps, and thieves. And
I
I'm
love
like a lot of the people. By the way, no insult to Rama gypsies. We have friends in that
it.
community.
Agree.
That's
No
an
worries.
expression, so forgive
Yeah.
me on that one. But
Old expression happens.
yeah, there you go. But I was seeing all these people, and it was clear they were just there for the take, and there was very very little little give. And I remember thinking, I think it's possible to build a business that isn't based on just ask, take, because I know I would like that. So
Hmm.
what would happen if if I functioned differently? And so I remember one of my earliest ventures was I had an email newsletter back when we called them e-zines, right?
Oh my
And the
gosh, I
whole
remember
idea
that.
was I'm going to build a website where the only thing on this website is an email newsletter opt in. That was it. I'm not going to try to sell anybody anything. And I was inspired actually by Google. Prior to Google, Yahoo and every other kind of search network, you'd go to it and there'd be a tiny little search box utterly surrounded by ads. And the big breakthrough, and the reason that everybody started using Google, it wasn't just that its algorithm was better, because in the beginning we didn't know and didn't care. It was that the
Hmm.
user interface was so clean. I mean, you went to it and it was just a search box. And I was
Plain
inspired by
like,
that.
yep.
Yeah, it was just search. And I was like, what if I had a website and the only thing on that website was an opt-in form for a newsletter? And I actually delivered great value on that. And my rule then was I'm not going to ask anybody for anything until they've been on my list for 14 days. Now that was hyper arbitrary. And looking back on it, kind of stupid, because I do believe you can make an ask earlier than that. But that was the arbitrary rule I came up with. And it was really just, how do I not look like everybody else out there?
Yeah.
And I think it paid off.
And it did pay off, and it set a trend. I think it really did. In fact, one of the things I really like, I was at Founders Board, your Founders Board last year, and one of the things you talked about was an email campaign that literally was just asking and answering questions. It
Hmm.
wasn't anything else. And it just, depending on the answer, if somebody wanted to reply, they replied and they get another email. If
Yep.
somebody wanted to reply, they reply. And it's just so clean and crisp. When you said the all white page, I remember you said, don't dress it up. Just put it on white paper and speak plain English for our purposes. And I really like that you've carried that in even 25 years later. I think that same kind of first principle is still, I see it still guiding what you produce.
Well, I wish I could say that we stick to, I mean, there's times when, uh, we're still a human, right? And we still, I think, there'll be times we push the envelope too far. When I look back on regrets that I've had throughout my career, it's times when it was like, holy crap, I need to make some money. And I think sometimes when you're starving when you're starving, you steal bread. And so I don't want anybody listening to this to think that I am, above
That's a
those,
great point. That
any of
is,
that.
we all have been through the ups and
Yeah.
the downs of it. And that's actually sort of one of the questions I want to ask you. I'm sure in this ride, you've hit times when you're like, oh my God, it's all falling apart. I need,
Oh,
I don't know what to do now. Any particular relationships jump out at you as somebody who's kind of climbed in the foxhole with you and said, we got this. Let's go handle it or do another thing, or kind of giving you that extra pump when you were ready to walk away.
so I had my first kind of, business disaster near bankruptcy in 2006. In
Okay.
2006, what happened was the year prior, Google had made a major algorithm update, and literally overnight, all my websites went bye bye. And I had to figure out now. Again, candidly, like I was not. I was building websites that were designed to rank. They weren't high quality websites, so I
Mhm.
get it. But I was, my business basically went from being this consistent, just chug, 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 making money to making literally $0 because
Wow.
all of my traffic was dependent upon organic. And so I knew I had to figure out the advertising side. And I ultimately did, but it took me about 18 months. And I didn't know what you taught me and what you understand, which is how to actually function on a P&L, not just looking at the bank account.
Yeah.
And
Got it.
back then in 2006, if you had a pulse and could fog a mirror, they'd give you a line of credit at the bank. Uh,
That
and,
is so true.
and
Pre 2008.
Wells Fargo gave me a $250,000 signature line of credit that was connected to my bank account. And so what was happening, I wasn't making a lot of money.
Yep.
Every dollar I was making, I was putting back into advertising and trying to figure out the new model, really just trying to save my business. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have been there. So I'm
Oh God, I know I have.
yeah.
Hello.
So
Yep.
I'm taking out only what I need to survive. And most of what I was doing personally, I was living off of credit cards. So I had a couple
Yep.
of credit cards, and if we were going out to eat, it was going on a credit card. Need to buy, a couch, it was going on a credit card. Filling up for
Hmm.
gas, it was going on a credit card. And then from a business perspective, money was coming in, and it was usually going right back out. The mistake
Got
that
it.
I made is that I because that line of credit was connected to my checking account, anytime my checking account hit zero, it automatically just tapped the line of credit. And so, from my perspective, and Pam, I wasn't looking at anything. I was
Mhm.
so heads down, so focused on the business.
Yep.
I wasn't checking my statements.
Yep.
All I knew was that whatever bills are getting paid, things are happening. I got to figure it out. Until one day, I was sitting at a bar at an event. The day one was over. I was at this event trying to figure out marketing stuff, and I went to go tab out, and my credit card was declined. And I went, "Oh, that's not good." And I checked, and sure enough, all my credit cards were maxed out. It's like,
That's
"Oh, well,
all
let
of
me
our
use
worst nightmare.
yeah, let me use my debit card." Debit card didn't work either. Oh, let me pull some money off the line of credit. Line of credit was tapped out. I was $336,000 in debt,
And didn't know it.
and I didn't really even know it. I mean, looking back on it, I think I probably knew. I just never did business with
Yeah.
it. Um,
It's
and
really interesting. I didn't want to jump on that for a minute because one of the things you've heard me say on your stage is everybody thinks they've got the most embarrassing story. And one of the things I constantly say is number one, you don't have the most embarrassing story. Everybody's got one in the room. And I am just so impressed that you just told that story. And this is what I want to get across to everybody who's listening. These things happen to all of us.
yeah,
And there is nothing to be embarrassed about to decide later that you're ready to fix it. And there's just no judgment on it. You think there is, but the judgment is literally somebody going, "Oh yeah, I did that. You did something else." It just happens. You're listening to Ryan Deiss tell a story about being $330,000 in debt and either ignoring it or not knowing it. we all have our equally embarrassing stories. So that I just want to stop on that for a minute because it's such a big thing that keeps people from dealing with their finances, I think. So
Well,
thank you for sharing that.
thank you for that. And if you like that, just wait because it gets worse. Um,
Hey,
so I did dig myself out of that hole. I didn't have to declare bankruptcy. It took massive, massive, effort and action. And I'll tell you, I didn't do what I would have done now. I didn't tell anybody. I was so ashamed. I literally
yeah.
was. I was so ashamed. I didn't ask for help from friends or mentors.
Wow.
I didn't even tell my wife how bad
Wow.
what
Yeah,
I
that
was
happens
feeling.
a lot.
Which ultimately, I mean, I had to really repent, of that. I mean, that was not, that was not good at all.
Yeah.
I told her after we were kind of dug out of the hole, but do you know how I dug out of that hole? Aside from just a Herculean effort and putting a lot of stuff in and figuring a lot of stuff out, and ultimately figuring out the whole pesky marketing and business thing from a
Hmm.
revenue perspective, I didn't pay my taxes. Every penny that I made either went to pay my bills or to pay my debt. And I
Got
wasn't setting anything aside for a tax payment. So here I am thinking, fast forward now 12 months, and I'm thinking, whew, dodge that bullet. Thankfully, we're on the other side of that. And I remember getting a call on a Sunday night from my accountant. I now know, by the way, it's bad when your accountant calls you on a Sunday night. Um, my accountant calls me and says, "Hey, Ryan, looks like you had a pretty good last year. I now
because
know
all
it's
your
bad.
went to debt payment.
I know it's bad when your accountant compliments you on the year you had last year." And he said, "Did you by any chance make any quarterly payments that I'm unaware of?" I went, "What are quarterly payments?"
Yeah, woo.
Yeah. To who? What do you mean? He's like, "Well, you owe about $280,000 in taxes. And I was just wondering if, you know, you had a way to pay that off."
So
Now,
you dug out of a $330,000 hole,
only to
stood
find
up,
myself in a
held it
$280,000
$280,000.
tax hole, which was even worse because I don't know if you've heard, but the government has missiles, right? So this was bad. And and then and so I get this call and I remember sitting on my couch, and it's one of the only times in my adult life I can actually remember crying. So I'm sitting there on my couch, crying. And because this is a long-winded answer to your question. What did
This
you
is, don't
what did
stop.
you lean on? Um, Sitting on my couch crying. This time my wife was sitting next to me. I couldn't hide it. And I had at this point revealed the hole we were in, how we dug out. And she just listened and she listened and she listened. And she said, "Well, I don't understand why you're so upset. You'll figure it out. You always do." And she got up and she went to bed. Now, some people have heard that and been like, "That seems a little bit heartless." It really was,
No,
because
that
my
makes
wife knows me.
cry.
She knows me. And what she knew is, if she'd have buckled and if she'd have said, "Oh, I guess I'll go get a job. Let's sell the house," I don't know that I personally would have had the strength to endure it again. I
Yep,
don't
to
think I
stand
would.
up and say, "I got this."
I like to think I would have, but I honestly, Pam, sitting here today, I don't know. And I kind of don't think I would have because I was so broken in that moment. But when she said, "You'll figure it out, you always do," she believed in me in that moment more than I did.
That's what I was gonna
And
say. That was someone else's faith speaking into you.
yep. And I just
Wow.
remember getting up. I went in the room, and no joke, she's in bed. And I said, "Can I have 24 hours to mope?" And she said, "You got 24 hours, and then you better get to work." That was April 11th. Tax day was April
15?
15th, just a few days away. Fortunately, at this point, I had learned a lot, and I had a lot more assets, and I had a lot more help. And I did. I leaned on. I called in every favor I could,
Help,
every friend that I
help,
could,
help.
and I was honest about the situation. I said, "Guys, I'm an idiot. I really need some help. Could you? I'm gonna." And I put together a promotion. We had a number of different businesses. Every single business I was in was effectively doing a Black Friday sale in April, right? And I was like,
Black
"We're
April sale.
we're turning up." And I'm not kidding. By April 15th, we had generated about $360,000 in sales. I made enough to cover the tax bill, plus enough to cover what I paid. I sent the entire amount to the IRS. And for the first time in years, I was broke. I was at zero, and it felt
At
amazing.
0, right, not in debt, and your wife showed incredible faith in you,
Yeah.
propped you up when you needed it most,
Yeah.
and you could have stopped everything in 2007 if she hadn't been there.
Yeah. And what she did, and it was her that gave me the courage to reach out to other people and to say, "Hey, I need some help."
I
here's
love
what I did. The year prior to that, I went through all that mess by myself, and I didn't have to then. I could have talked to
it.
her, and she probably would have
Yep.
said the same thing. I could have
Yep.
called all my friends and asked for help then, and they probably would have done the exact same thing.
Mhm.
The lesson that I learned there was that there's no shame in this game. Not from the people that matter. Those who aren't in the arena might judge you and laugh at you. Those who said you couldn't do it might, but not the people who are out there doing it, not the opinions who matter.
Yep. And we separate ourselves, I think, in a hierarchy in this world. And we have, oh, those that are successful and are established as successful, the Ryan Deisses, the Tony Robbins, all of those people. And then there's like this second tier that thinks we're this. And then there's a third tier, and then there's a fourth tier. The belief as you work your way, as you're working your way up those tiers, is that you're alone and nobody's going to help you. But in your circles, in my circles, what is so cool is that every time somebody makes another step, they look back behind and see who they can grab.
Yeah.
And, honestly, that's how I see. Ryan did the forward on my book, guys. I think I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but Ryan did the forward on my book. He had no reason to do that. Truly no reason except that he cares. And I think it's important to know, you can know if you're in the right circles, if you're comfortable saying to people around you, above, below, not that above and below is a thing, because I always tell my daughter this, there is no up and down in space. Like there is not really a north and a south,
Yeah.
but all around you, ask for help.
Yeah.
Ask for help when you need it, because we all need it. And that story, man, I teared up 3 times during that story, Ryan. Thank you. So
Yeah.
your wife is a key player for you.
My wife is a key player. I mean, I'm privileged to have, at this point now, I'm privileged to have a number of people who I once looked at as, mentors and people, like you said, above me, who now
Mhm.
we're friends. And so
You kick up.
I'm blessed now to be able just to, yeah, text or call, and,
I
and
love
help me out. But there were definitely a selection of, of friends there. But yeah, it ultimately came down to my wife. If it weren't for her doing that in that moment, I wouldn't have called those other people. I think I would have just curled up in a ball,
Yeah.
and just given up.
I'm so glad you did, because you certainly made all the difference in my career. When I started, I tripped. I started in entrepreneurship when I left corporate in about 2016, 2017. And that seemed to be a high point of scamsters, because I got into some what appeared to be like once I was in it, appeared to be like multi-level. Basically, I'm going to sell you how to sell somebody else on how to sell them on this. And
Yeah.
this is actually how to sell somebody else on this. And it was just this awful Ponzi scheme. And I think I tripped over 2 or 3 of those before I found digital marketer. So I came to digital marketer just to learn about marketing, but very cynical. I'm like, oh, here's another one. I wonder what I'm going to find when I start reading these things. And it was nothing but incredibly helpful information. There was free stuff, there was paid stuff, but it all resonated. And that's when I realized there's like a gold vein that you got to find of your people, and once you do, it just explodes. And you've just been so generous in sharing your network with me as well, which is just amazing. And my next kind of question is a little bit of a weird one, but when you look back on the relationships that have kind of fed your business, but also fed you, I gotta make sure my phone doesn't ring here, hang on, but also fed you personally. One of the things I love about you is that you are you, whether you're on a stage, on a podcast, I meet you in a hallway, and I'm guessing you're the same on a basketball court or whatever you do. How did you go through the period where people told you have to have a business page and a personal page and your persona has to be different? And what's your take on that? Like,
Oh yeah. I mean, I did it, and I'll tell you, because I also have always done some aspect of public speaking,
yeah,
and so which for me, that again, I was an accidental speaker as well. I was doing stuff, and people were like, "Oh, can you come and talk?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." Before I knew to say no. And what I thought I had to do is I thought I had to be and look like everybody else who was up there doing their thing, and I
got it.
tried
Yep.
that for a while. And it was so bad, Pam. I mean, I was so bad at it. I'll never forget. It was, I think, the second time I spoke. I remember I spoke at this event, and I knew about like 5 or 10 minutes in that it wasn't going well, which is not a good feeling if you
Had
got like a
those days.
60-minute talk and like this isn't going well. And that head talk didn't make it go better. And when I was done with my talk, um, everybody clapped because they do. If nothing else, be like, thank God that's over, right? They all clapped, and I remember I'm coming off stage and I'm not feeling great, and this person starts walking up to me, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're gonna have a question, they're gonna want to take a picture, and it was this Australian fella, and he was like, hey, that was shit, right?
I love it.
But he said it like Australians curse so eloquently. I couldn't even really
They
be that
do.
offended.
I
But
want to know it. I want to know that Australian. That's
yeah,
hysterical.
I wish I'd gotten his name. I'd follow up with him because he did help change the trajectory at least of my speaking career. But I just I remember thinking. I said to him, I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "You're trying to act like everybody else." He's like, "You should just talk. You should just teach."
He was your
And
Australian angel, is what he was.
yeah, this is maybe getting a little TMI kind of thing, but I really had to pee after this. I mean, I've been up on stage for a while. I had to go to the bathroom, right? But I didn't want to go into the bathroom because I knew that people would be in there talking. And so I waited. I was so embarrassed. I waited. And I went and so I was like, all right, when like people had gone in, I was like, all right, I just gotta go. And so I went in and I found like a stall, right? Because I'm like, I'm not gonna stand at a urinal. Like,
I
hey,
in the urinal.
you don't know this
This is
trouble.
one
Like,
benefit of being a woman. You always get a stall.
cool. Yeah, you're gonna stall. So I'm like, I'm gonna go stall. And I hear behind me a couple of
Oh
guys
no.
who were at the urinal being like, what'd you think about that last talk? I was like, man, that was rough. And he's like, yeah. And then the next thing the guy said was like, hey, are you gonna watch the game tonight? And what I realized is in that moment is I just don't matter that much.
Oh God, what an insight.
I just don't matter. Like it was a brief comment that was true, so I can learn from it. It wasn't unfair.
Mhm.
I thought the same thing, and I thought I can learn from that. But I realized I just don't matter that much. And so when I speak now, or when I do businessy things, if it's high stakes, I get nervous. You should if it matters.
Mhm.
But I don't. But if I find if I get too much, if I get too nervous, I got to ask myself, is this ego? Like, am I nervous because I'm afraid to look foolish? And if I just remind myself, you just don't matter that much, right?
I love
You don't
that.
matter that much. You're going to go up here and you're going to try to add some value, and maybe you will, and maybe you won't. But then they're just going to move on with their lives, and
I love
that's okay. And that just gave me such a peace and a sense of freedom just to be myself. And what do you know? It worked.
it.
And not everybody likes me, and that's okay. People don't like me. Not everybody likes me in real life.
Well, that's
And so
okay because
not
I like
everybody,
to heck with them.
right. But like at least I don't have to, like, what I don't want is for somebody to dislike the fake version of me because that's
Right.
harder, it takes more work, and maybe they would have liked the real one. So I
Oh,
don't adopt a lot of these things. I think there's a place for understanding context, right? And I
mhm.
think a lot of people take authenticity too far to mean it's okay to be an asshole. It's not. You still be kind and
Very
professional.
true. Filters are still sometimes the better choice.
Right. I mean, maybe I shouldn't have, dropped a, minor curse word on your
Oh, a
thing.
deeper.
But
You'll have to watch one of my
oh, I
brews
know. Yeah.
and news sessions because you can't drop anything that
But
would hurt.
But yeah, so I don't buy into that. I think I think you want to be intentional about who you are in your brand, be thoughtful about what it means. But being overly businessy or corporatey, I have not seen benefit anybody
It,
ever.
yeah, it's not it. It's so spot on. And you made me think of two other things while we're wrapping up here. But you did two things. Everybody, I've had probably now 15 of these conversations, the Know Your Map conversations, and every single one has had this angel that just came in and floated out of their life.
Hmm.
Had they not been there at that time and said whatever that thing was, it would have changed everything. I had one who picked me up after I got laid off from a job because I basically had been an asshole for a year, quite frankly. And the CFO said, "Yeah, we're doing a downsizing." I'm like, "Yeah, no, let me
You're the
translate
only
that."
one getting downsized. We're doing a downsizing of assholes.
Yeah, we're removing all assholes from position. But somebody came and kind of picked me up from the collar, dusted me off, and turned me into a totally self-confident person who really understood the value I could add. And then they've floated out of my life. And like I said, everybody's got that person, and I'm really glad you hit on that. I think that's kind of a theme. The second is the self-awareness. I mean, you kind of have to learn how to be self-aware and not let the ego get in the way as an entrepreneur because you're going to get beat up.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you said, you're not that important. It's like when people worry about how they look or how they think, I said, people really aren't looking at you that much. They're just not.
Mm-mm.
And it gets in our head that we give ourselves sometimes standards that are way, way, way too high to be perfect. And when we try to be perfect, it just gets worse.
Yeah.
So I love
What if
that
all I
story.
worry about is how I can serve them? Like if
And you,
that's my thing, if I'm nervous about, if I feel good about my preparation for something,
yep,
and I've thought intentionally about the people I'm looking to serve ahead of time, then I can be a little bit nervous, but I can have confidence that I'm here for the right reason, and that my preparation is going to carry me through it. Doesn't mean it'll be perfect, but I can have confidence in that. And if I'm still
that's
nervous,
so
then it's
well
probably
put.
just ego.
That's so well put. Confidence is absolutely the key. So tell me a little bit about what's going on right now in your world with all of your various businesses. If somebody wants to kind of find out more about Ryan, which I'm sure they will after this, and I know I'm going to re-listen to it again because I learned some things I didn't know before. What's the best way to kind of connect with you or find where they can learn more? And
So the best way
mostly,
to
Ryan's a marketing genius, guys. So listen carefully, and we'll drop it all in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to connect with me personally is I'm on Twitter or X. It's the channel that
Awesome.
I like and I enjoy because I like written content, and um,
Love
and my DMs are open. And so if somebody's
it.
like, "How can I connect with you?" DM me on Twitter, or X.
You
It's
got
/ Ryan
that's
Deiss.
amazing.
That's me. In terms of what I'm up to, I'm a marketer. You know that it's what I'm best known for. But I'm really an entrepreneur. The marketing stuff was always a byproduct of me teaching what I was doing to figure out the quote unquote real businesses. And I've always had these companies that I had on the side that were what I consider to be the real companies. And like,
Isn't that funny?
digital marketer. A lot of people don't know this, but digital marketer uh, was formed 3 years after we did Traffic and Conversion Summit. So I had just had random products that I would sell. I never saw it as a
I
business.
didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I never treated it like a business at all. And then we decided that we were going to do Traffic and Conversion Summit because I felt like there should be a marketing event that wasn't just a pitch fest. And so we did Traffic and Conversion Summit, but it really wasn't until TNC3 when I remember looking out, there's almost 1,000 people in this room, thought this is a thing. We should maybe turn this into a company. So yeah, Digital Marketer was formed on day 3, year 3 of Traffic and Conversion Summit. So the
Wow.
marketing side of the game, it's what I'm known for because it's been the public persona for
It's what we see, right?
for a couple of decades. But it's not actually what I do. I mean, I play a marketer on TV a lot of times, and it's why if you go and buy a product at Digital Marketer, good chance it's not me teaching it because it ain't
Yeah.
me doing it. Like I don't even
Yep.
log into my company's Meta accounts or Google accounts. They won't give
Love
them to
that.
me.
You have done what you teach in scaling. You've become the business owner,
Right.
investor, as opposed to the operator. And that's what I love about Scalable is it really walks you through those stages and gets somebody from entrepreneur all the way down to exiting the business or turning it into passive income and moving on to the next one
Well,
or adding the next one.
and that's why I'm excited about the Scalable company, Scalable.co, which is I say the new project. It was formed kind of immediately after COVID because in 2018 and 2019, my partners and I exited the vast majority of our portfolio. Literally, the only business that we had left as a wholly owned company was Digital Marketer, and it's because it was kind of my face and it was a platform, and I didn't want to sell it. It was worth more to me than it was if I could sell it. So
Yeah,
think like
you had done that pre-COVID. It wasn't a result of COVID.
correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 2018 and 2019 was when we started selling all the businesses.
Ah,
And so I was sitting there, candidly feeling a little bit lost. I mean, a lot of people who sell their businesses, they're like, well, crap, now what? And
call
I
that a
was,
success hangover.
yeah, exactly. And so but I knew I wanted to do something else. We weren't quite sure. And so, what I really wanted to do is I wanted to start talking directly to entrepreneurs again. The early vision of Digital Marketer was really leveling the playing field for business owners to do their own marketing. Because at the time, you had people like you who were experts in their craft
You didn't know what
getting
to do.
beat by people who didn't know squat, but they were good at Facebook ads, right?
Yeah.
I felt like
Yeah.
that was fundamentally flawed and wrong. And so it's like, well, we're just going to level the playing field. We're going to give a lot of stuff away for free. We're going to make it super cheap and easy to learn this stuff. So neener, now everybody will know how to do it, right? And so, but I was originally my goal was to serve entrepreneurs because that's who I was and that's who
Yeah.
I knew. But something happened in the digital marketing world. Well, two things happened. Number one, digital marketing became a profession. It got professionalized. And so
Yeah,
now
it's
the
free.
customers And the people that were coming into digital marketer, they weren't as many entrepreneurs, some
With
startups,
marketers.
but it was agency owners and it was a lot of marketing professionals, which is
Got it.
wonderful. We love
Yep.
them, but they weren't my peeps. Now, at the same time, the other thing that was happening is the marketing was working, and now these business owners had new problems. They had problems of scale, which is fundamentally different than growth and marketing problems. And you know what?
Yeah.
We were having them too. And so I was having to learn a new playbook. I was having to learn to play a new game. And I wanted to talk about that, but I didn't have any real venue to do it. I didn't have a mechanism or a brand to do it under. And so I was excited after we sold everything. Let's launch the Scalable company. Let's talk to entrepreneurs who are in that swamp of scale. And
Mhm.
and that's what we've been doing. Tried around a lot of different ways, but what I'm proud of is I took kind of everything that I knew and just put it in a book. And
Love
so
it.
now if you want to know, like at the Scalable company, it's really simple. We basically have one thing, well, two things to sell you. We can sell you a services package where we help you build out your business operating system, or you can join our mastermind. Both of those things are very expensive.
Hmm.
Freely admit, worth every penny. Or you could buy my book, and there's nothing in the middle. There's nothing in the middle. Like
Yep.
if you want to do it yourself, here's a book. It's $20. It costs
And
what
you
it costs.
can do it yourself from the book. What I
And
will
you
tell
can.
you guys, this book is all you need,
Yeah.
right? So this isn't one of those typical things where he gives you enough to make you go, oh God, I need them. Would it make it easier and simpler? Sure, but you can do this book. Like you can do
Yep.
what's in this book is what
All
I
the
love
tools,
about it.
all the resources that we use, if you became one of our clients, the same tools that we would use to build out your operating
Yep.
system are available free in the book. I
And
didn't
I've
want anything to
adopted
take
a
back.
lot of your tools.
Yeah.
Like I use them now in my business. It's
And thank you. And that's my goal. But if somebody's like, hey, I want some help, cool, let's have that conversation. Um, but you asked, what are we doing? All of this is really just basically a front for our own kind of micro private equity. What I want to do now and for the rest of my life is play in other people's sandboxes.
I
Startups are
love it.
fun, but after 25 years of doing this stuff, Pam, I'd rather be actively involved and help other people who have that entrepreneurial energy and fire, help them scale to the next level, get to participate in a minority position.
Yep.
And so the goal really of the Scalable company is to get us working with doing good quality work with other entrepreneurs in the hopes that we can partner up and do business
I
together.
love it.
That's how
I love
last
that.
year the portfolio of companies did over $200 million in revenue. So I think it's working. I think it's
I
working.
think it might be working. Congrats. And that is, and it is you are the epitome of relationships because that's what that is. You're building the relationships with Scalable. You're not forcing them into a partnership. You're building the relationships and everybody hits it off with relationships. Then boom, you've got a great partnership. It benefits them.
Exactly.
It benefits you. It's just, I love the model and I'm so glad that you're doing it. And I hope you never stop, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I don't plan on it. I mean, I've been doing
Good.
this for 25 years, but I'm 43, so I'm not going to retire anytime soon.
You're a
So
baby. Yeah.
yeah, the way I see it, I mean, I've got at least another 25 years, and maybe who knows, maybe another 25 on top of that.
You've got more than that because I got 20 years on you and I'm
Yeah.
nowhere near quitting.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see what I'm doing right now. I feel like is something I can do for the rest of my life without getting bored, and that's
Yeah,
exciting to me.
perfect. That's perfect because that was always my problem in corporate. I love to be a problem solver, love to fix things, but the minute something was fixed, I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
And so I'd hop and hop and hop, not hop. I mean, I got promotions or moved to another job or
Yeah.
whatever. With entrepreneurship, you get to do so many different things. You just don't have time to get bored. Right now, I'm going down the DeFi and crypto rabbit hole just for
Oh,
my
nice.
fun in my fun time.
Well, yeah.
Because
With all that extra time, I'll tell you my model for it though. I know we got to wrap, but
yeah, I know.
have
Darn,
I
no, we
got
don't.
I got 4 kids, right? I know what it is to parent. Um, Being an entrepreneur, a startup, it's parenting. You don't get to opt out of diaper changes and stuff like that. Um,
Yes.
it's parenting, and it's also a decade-long commitment. Anybody, who's starting a business with plans to
Brilliant.
flip in a couple of years, forget about it, right? So
Not
when
gonna
you
happen.
start a business, I don't consider my businesses to be my babies. I have actual children who are I'd set any one of these companies on fire, before I would see anything even remotely negative happen to them. But
Yep.
I do think the analogy holds true. What I want to do now, though, is I want to be a grandparent. And what I hear from grandparents is it's the best of all worlds because you get to play with the kids. But when you're sick of them, you can hand them back to the parents. And so
Great
I am
analogy.
moving as my children are getting older and beginning to leave the nest. I now am shifting into business grandpa, and
Business grandpa.
I want to help grandparent some other entrepreneurs, babies, play with them, and then when they're not fun, be like, here, take your business. I did
Take your
the best I
baby.
could. It was fun,
Yep.
but it's your
Go
baby.
change the diaper.
Go
Yeah,
change
go
the
change
diaper.
that. Well, I am certainly glad that you have invited me into your world. It's been one of the best parts of what I do as an entrepreneur, and I'm just so grateful for that and your time today. We ran longer than I promised you we'd run because this was a fascinating conversation for me. There are so many bits and pieces I'm going to highlight from this that I really want you to pay attention to, folks, if you're listening. This is a man who's been at it for 25 years. He's still very young. He's done all of the things, good, bad, right, wrong, and he's held his values and he lives them in what he's doing today. And I know he kind of sold himself a little short and said, hey, I've done shitty things like everybody. We've all done shitty things, but we all have kind of, I believe that you are a first principle guy with values that infuse that. And I'm just grateful for you're out there. And thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for being my friend.
Oh, take care. And I will see you soon. I forget where, but I'm seeing you soon somewhere.
Well, if nothing else, you're back at our event this year. So
Definitely then. Definitely
nothing
has to be
else.
there.
Get
But I
scalabilized.
think I see you somewhere before that. I just can't remember where.
Yeah, we'll hang out.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
I hope that video was helpful, and I hope you subscribe to my channel for more information on finances in your business.